Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Tuesday, March the 12th, 2024. Apologize, I had to take the last couple of weeks off. I was really sick, and because I think for those of you who listened, the last couple of ones that I recorded before, I wasn't able to record anymore. were pretty rough. My voice was pretty rough. And then my daughter Caitlin has been real sick, and so I've been obviously involved with that and visiting her in the hospital. So I'm back, and I want to focus on our gospel reading from Sunday. The passage, it's one of those passages that appears, or encounters, I should say, appears in all three of the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. There's differences between them. We're not going to focus so much on that. We're focusing on Mark's version of the event. And if you were in church, you heard the lesson. I'll read at least the beginning of it for you again right now. One of the scribes, this is Mark 12, beginning at the 28th verse. One of the scribes came near and heard them disputing with one another. Seeing that he, meaning Jesus, answered them well, he asked them, which commandment is the first of all? Which is most important? Which is the preeminent commandment? In my sermon on Sunday, I talked about the fact that the rabbis calculated there's about 613 commandments and laws. And so, what's at the top of the list? Well, they kind of knew that themselves, as this passage demonstrates. But Jesus, of course, answers, the first is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And a second is like it, or a second is this. See, that's the difference. In Matthew, Jesus says, and a second is like it. In Mark, it's simply the second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. So it's kind of the same thing. They're linked together. There's no commandment greater than the two of these, which is kind of a cobbling together of Deuteronomy 6:4, hear, O Israel, Lord our God is one. And also Leviticus 19:18, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. When the Jewish psychiatrist Viktor Frankl was arrested by the Nazis in World War II and put in the Auschwitz death camp, he, like all the other people there, was stripped of everything: property, family, possessions. But in his case, also a manuscript that he had spent years researching and writing on finding meaning in life. The manuscript had been sewn into the lining of his coat. Well, now it seemed as if no one would survive me, neither a physical or a spiritual child of my own. I found myself confronted with the question of whether under such circumstances my life was ultimately void of any meaning. Again, everything was stripped away from him. And a few days later, the Nazis forced the prisoners to give up what little clothing they still had. And I had to surrender my clothes, he says, and in turn inherited the worn-out rags of an inmate who had been sent to the gas chamber. And instead of the many pages of my manuscript, again, that he had sewn into his own clothing, I found in the pocket of the newly acquired coat a single page torn out of a Hebrew prayer book, which contained the Jewish prayer, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. How should I have interpreted such a coincidence, he says, other than as a challenge to live my thoughts instead of merely putting them on paper? And of course, Frankl would later reflect on this ordeal in his book entitled Man's Search for Meaning, saying there's nothing in the world that would so effectively help one to survive even the worst conditions as the knowledge that there is meaning in one's life. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. It was an interesting moment for him. I can't even imagine spending countless hours and effort preparing a manuscript where you're putting all your thoughts down and then to lose that. But then this idea that's being replaced by a reminder of what it's all about, I guess. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, different versions of that. And I guess it comes back to our primary purpose in life. And of course, Jesus links it to the idea that loving God is not in the abstract. And I think that's what Frankl came to understand. All these things he was thinking about, you can't really do it in the abstract. Maybe it's more significant that we do it in life, in reality, in our living. Someone once said that the love of God is the root, the love of neighbor is the fruit. Neither can exist without the other, but the one is cause and the other effect. So love of God inspires and creates the capacity for love of neighbor. And someone else noted, let God love you through others, and let God love others through you. There's a sense in which that by Jesus linking that Deuteronomy 6:4 and Leviticus 19:18 together, that we love God by loving others. And when we love others, we love God. And that's kind of the basic idea, the basic understanding of living out a life of faith, loving God and loving others. Well, we'll continue to explore this idea of loving God and loving others in the next few days. Hope you can join me tomorrow and in the days following. Until then, take care. Have a great day today. Bye.